Let's go. Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's a little bit after 5. Let's start with commissioners. Commissioners present. I'm Don Griffin.
Cindy Canarney's here.
Nick Kappas is here.
Eric Sandweiss.
David Walter.
Okay, staff present.
Christina Finley, Hand Department.
Okay.
Jeff Underwood, Controller Treasurer.
Doris Sims, Hand Department.
Matt Swinney, Hand Department.
Oh, sorry, Larry Allen, Legal.
Alex Crowley, Economic Sustainable Development.
Okay. All right. Let's start with the reading of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for November the 2nd, 2020?
Cindy Canarney moves approval.
Second, Nick Kappas.
All those in favor? I, Don Griffin.
Cindy Canarney, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Eric Sandweiss, yeah.
David Walter, yes.
None opposed. The motion carries. Examination of claims. Is there a motion to approve the claims register for October the 30th, 2020?
This is Eric Sandweiss. I approve. I move approval of the claims register.
This is David Walter. I'll second.
All in favor? I, Don Griffin.
Cindy Canarney, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Sandweiss, yes.
David Walter, yes.
None opposed. The motion carries. Examination of payroll registers. Is there a motion to approve the payroll register for November the 6th, 2020?
Cindy Canarney moves approval.
Nick Kappas, second.
Second.
All in favor? I, Don Griffin.
Cindy Canarney, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Sandweiss, yes.
David Walter, yes.
None opposed. The motion carries. Next, we'll have the reports of officers and committees. Is there a director's report?
No, I don't have anything to report.
Okay. Is there a legal report?
The only thing I would note is the RDC met in executive session just before that. Just so you know, that was for the purposes of discussing strategy of real estate transactions. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any other questions that the commissioners may have.
Okay. Is there a treasurer's report?
There is not. I will donate my time to our upcoming presentation.
Okay. Is there a CTP update report?
I will do the same thing and donate my time.
Fantastic. All right, let's go on to new business. The next item of business is the SOM presentation on the hospital site. Who would like to speak in regards to this?
Just quickly,
President Griffin, I think I'll start.
could I get screen sharing capabilities?
I'm sorry?
Rachel Momini.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Could I get screen sharing capabilities? I'll be running the presentation.
Okay, that's above my pay. Who does that around here?
Yeah, you should already be able to share.
It's telling me that host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Let me see if I can do that. Hold on.
All right, thank you.
Okay, it's not letting me share for some reason. I'm going to make you a co-host so that you can share.
Great, thank you.
Okay, try it now.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, Rachel's got us up on the screen. Commissioner President Griffin, it's Mick Reneisen, the Deputy Mayor, who will start the presentation. I'll hand it off to our colleagues from SOM here in a slide or two. If that's okay with you, I will proceed.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, a little bit of a background about the project. With your assistance, the city has entered into a purchase agreement with IU Health to acquire the 24 acres you see on this slide outlined in yellow. That was accomplished back in May of 2018 after several years of negotiations. I think it's important to note that the entire area that is currently zoned medical in this location is close to 70 acres. So we're just highlighting the 24 acres of the purchase, and that's what the master plan largely covers, although we've asked SOM to consider zoning implications for the entire 70-acre parcel, which is timely since our UDO mapping process is underway, and we'll be working hand in hand with the planning department as we proceed with the plan commission on that in the future. As you are also aware, the IUH location will move to their new site, IU Health that is, on the east side of Bloomington. That planned move is sometime in late 2021, so about a year or so from now. The purchase agreement that we have with IU Health also states that the city will receive a clear and remediated site when the transfer of property occurs for the main site. That's just the big block in the middle, the largest of the parcels. And we expect that demolition remediation phase is likely to be completed sometime in early 2023, so a little more than 2 years away from now. As is also part of the agreement, the city has the option to keep the parking structure and the core building. And to date, with your approval, the city's opted to keep the parking structure, and we have until the end of December to make a decision on the core building. And you can expect us to bring you a recommendation in early December about that particular aspect of the project. Throughout this process, which started back in 2015, a hospital reuse committee consisting of 30+ residents has helped steer the project forward. And all along the way, you've had representation on that group since its inception. On this slide, you'll see a little bit about the timeline of what's happened to date with our SOM team leading most of the public engagement and the master planning process. So we selected SOM back in January. We've been conducting stakeholder and small group interviews. Those were done back in May and early June. And the first public forum was conducted on June 16th. There were 200 participants in that forum. I think we all wondered back in the early stages of COVID how many people would participate in these type of Zoom meetings. We've all learned that that has not been a barrier. If anything, it's probably increased public participation. That first forum asked participants what they'd like to see on the site as it redevelops. So very open-ended based on a lot of public feedback that we had at the first public forum in June. In the second public forum on August 6th, we had over 100 in attendance. And this forum focused on the economic conditions and the early conceptual design options, reflecting feedback from Forum 1 and input from approximately 300 survey respondents. Then the third public forum was held on October 6th. There were 74 people that participated on that call. SOM shared the refined plan based on comments from those received throughout the process to date prior to that. And since that third forum, SOM refined the draft master plan to reflect the scale of the proposed redevelopment rather than the character. So the final opportunity for public comment will be after the public presentation of this draft master plan, which will happen this Wednesday at the City Council's meeting at 6:30 p.m. And we're directing people, the public and others, to the website we've created for this project, bloomingtonhospitalsite.com, where Wednesday night's presentation will be posted and a form will be available for comments to be completed by the public to respond to the draft master plan. Those comments we'd like to receive by November 29th so SOM can complete their work on the final master plan before the end of the year. It's important to note, I think, for all of us, just I remind people every time we meet, that a master plan develops concepts and a framework for development. A master plan does not create architecturally designed buildings that will ultimately be built on the site. That'll obviously come later as the site becomes available for development. While the main hospital site will not be available until early 2023, after demolition and remediation are completed, some of the areas outside of the main site may be available later in 2021. And you'll hear in this presentation how we think some of the phasing options might present themselves. Of course, we'll continue to update you and seek feedback on and approval on potential investments on this site as more information becomes available. I now will turn it over to Doug Voigt from SOM to lead us through the next part of the presentation.
Great, thanks, Mick. So as was previously mentioned, we've had many touch points with members of the community, neighborhood organizations, as well as the potential private development community that will build portions of this site over its implementation. The feedback has been great, and I think many ideas have come out through this quite interesting process. Next. One of the key things that was identified early was how to translate the values of Bloomington and apply them to the site through what we were calling planning principles. And here you can see those principles. Perhaps many of you have seen them before, but they address highest and best use. They talk about diversity. They talk about inclusion and variety of housing types. But they also talk about the quality of the public realm, focusing on public first street design, and complete streets is something that we'll talk about a bit later. The type of outdoor public space, both for recreation, but also for amenity and ways to address stormwater and sustainable features on the site. But also, as was previously mentioned, this is a framework. So although it may look at zoning implications, it will not specify exact uses, but offer ways for the city and the community to further consider unique amenities to anchor within the development, such as on the ground floors of these buildings, or the variety of mixed use that can be accommodated within each of the many blocks you'll see on the site. Next. We like this drawing, although it's at the scale of the city. It helps us really understand the importance of the site in relationship to downtown and Courthouse Square, its connection along the B line, but also these other connections to the adjacent neighborhoods and surrounding area. Next. Again, just reiterating, the 24 acres of the hospital site that will be redeveloped are in the solid yellow line. The additional 52 acres that would be rezoned over time are in the dashed line and extend towards the upper right, or what is the western boundaries of the area. Next. We had the opportunity to spend a couple of walking tours early on and throughout the process. For us, very helpful to understand the diversity and unique edges, as well as the scale of the hospital as it relates to the site today. Next. So what we'll do next is take you through a couple of updated diagrams that speak to the master plan concept or framework, as we've referred to in these conversations. So this is a view looking very similar to that aerial a moment ago. You can see the B line here on the lower portion of the drawing, the existing grocery store and surface parking lot. Perhaps you're all familiar with that area right around 2nd Street. Downtown is to the right, and the lower right and off the page. What we've highlighted here is both the hospital site itself in red, as well as the other buildings that will likely be removed over time. If you can click to the next slide, you can see that the majority of those will be removed, with the exception of the existing parking garage and the possibility to repurpose the core administrative building just adjacent to the green space at First Street and Rogers. What this site is highlighting, if you can just go back for a moment, Rachel, is that there is some amount of cut and fill that will be necessary once the buildings are removed to allow for more accessible grading along the future streets connecting Prospect Hill to McDowell Gardens. Next. And this would be done in coordination with not only improvements to existing streets, but extension of some of the streets in the community through the site. For example, Fairview Street would be extended from First Street through to 2nd Street. Jackson Street would be extended from Wiley into the site, and Maple Street would be extended between First Street and Second Street. We've also talked about other street improvements for both First and Second Streets. Next. In addition to the north-south connections, we looked at extending a greenway from the B line into the site, extending up to the Hunter School at the western portions of the site. This would be accompanied with a new slow traffic street that would provide access to each of the development parcels and to the interior of the site. Next. And by making these necessary connections with the streets and this internal greenway, we create a framework of development blocks at Parcels that can support a range of density as well as housing types. So as you can see, the color key here on the left, from smaller scaled single family lots on the southern end of the site by Wiley Street as a transition to McDowell Gardens neighborhood, but also stepping up in height to the north towards Second Street, one of the main streets coming into the city from the west, and as it faces Building Trades Park and some of the other commercial uses on the southern end of Prospect Hill. Next. One of the things we heard from many of the residents and from the community was the importance of activation, community amenities, not just retail, within the ground floor of these buildings to support a walkable and inclusive neighborhood. And this is just a listing of some of the possibilities that we've heard. Again, the final uses that would be located in these ground floors would be part of a development proposal for specific parcels. Next. Switching to plan view, you can see here what I had summarized just a moment ago in terms of improved streets in the blue color. So you can see Morton Street and Rogers Street, as well as Second and First Street had already been identified under another project to be improved by the city. And then a series of new streets in the lighter brown color. And the street that is extending east-west from the B line over to a new Fairview Street that's dashed just offers the possibility to close that for special events, but to understand that it would be designed perhaps as a shared street for both people and cars. Next. And that builds on this principle we've been discussing a lot with the surrounding community, is the importance of complete streets, designing for safety of pedestrians and to create a walkable, enjoyable and safe district. Next. So this is Second Street today, and just an example of how we apply these principles, going away from a wider street condition to, if you go to the next slide, Rachel, here, as you can see on the left, to something that introduces a two-way bike path, additional landscaping, on-street parking with what we call bump outs or areas to, again, reduce the amount of lanes that a pedestrian is required to cross at major intersections, so that it's really now designed as a street for both people and cars. Next. We applied a similar approach to many of the new streets, Fairview, Jackson, and Madison streets, that these would be two-way streets, one way in either direction, with strategic locations of on-street parking to support visitors and other people coming into the district that don't have off-street parking within their individual parcel. Next. This is a diagram that then starts to identify the existing landscapes that will be enhanced and improved. So there is the lawn outside of the core building there at Rogers and First. And of course, you all know of Building Trades Park and the small open space outside of the school. Next. This diagram then overlays an illustration of what that park space could be along the greenway, as well as the internal courtyards and sort of smaller mid-block walks between some of the future development sites. Next. This is a zoom in of that space. And we looked at many iterations, and one of the feedback we received was that there should be a diversity of activities, from these wetland gardens to more meandering casual space to perhaps areas where there's plazas as we approach some of the more major streets such as Rogers Street and the Beeline. You can see there's these ideas of plazas as a way to welcome people into this shared open space. Next. The last thing we want to share in terms of implementation, this is the current planning in terms of the transfer of lands. So in green is the property transfer where the buildings would be demolished and cleaned as per the IU health agreement. And then the areas in yellow, the property would be transferred as is. So buildings would need to be removed. Surface parking would need to be redeveloped. This is an illustration of the 10 development parcels that were a result of this framework plan. And as I mentioned before, each of these has the ability to look at a variety of building types and uses within each block. Where you see number 4, just south of 2nd Street, adjacent to that gray bar, that's the existing surface or the existing structured parking garage. So this shows how we can integrate that existing resource into the development of this community. Next. Now, we've also started to think of potential early phases of development, most likely on areas outside of the hospital itself. So there is an area at the corner of 2nd Street and Morton Street, right by the Beeline, building off of that asset that's already there in terms of the Beeline, potentially realigning Madison Street to set up these 2 parcels, and some other things we'll go through in just a moment, but that's on generally flat land that can be immediately accessed from both 2nd Street and Morton Street. And then a little further to the west, there's the opportunity for a parallel early phase at Fairview and First Street. Again, some removal of buildings, but generally a discrete piece that could be developed perhaps in an early phase. And over time, the remaining development blocks would be coordinated with the completion of public infrastructure and new streets through the site, connecting from the south to the north. And this is just a characterization of those street typologies and new open space features. Next. Perhaps a bit more detail for each of these early phases. As I mentioned, phase 1 west, there on First Street, could deliver upwards of 12 to 15 units. There would be some minor improvements to both First Street as well as Fairview Street and demolition of existing buildings. Phase 1 on the east has a bit more enabling work in terms of streetscape improvements and demolition of buildings, but it offers a far higher development yield in terms of anywhere from 200 to 350 units, as well as other uses on that important corner of the site. And then the later phases, we've just started to articulate, again, the timing of other infrastructure, street connections, and open space improvements that would be coordinated with the incremental development of the site. Next. And so as a result, from this framework and this thinking about public space and development, we thought we'd share a couple early illustrations of what that potential may be. So this is a view looking today on the Beeline, looking west at the surface parking lot. You can see the hospital building in the background above the tree line. And again, this is just an early artist rendering, not a specific architecture at this point, but to show how this plaza and greenway could come out to meet the B line, framed by new residences and mixed use activities on the ground floor leading you into the site. Go to the next slide. As I mentioned, another early phase could be further west on First Street. This is on First Street, looking actually east, I believe. And if you go to the next image, the idea of single family and other housing choices developed along First Street, as well as on the left here, what could be developed on the hospital site itself at time in the future. Again, with a series of streetscape improvements that have already been identified and I believe budgeted by the city. Next. And then a view from Building Trades Park and the existing parking garage there on the left. Go to the next slide. The idea of really building out this edge with a variety of uses to activate the street, but to also activate and create a stronger connection with the surrounding community and the type of uses and activities that bring people together. And that is done so in a scale that acknowledges the importance of the street, but also transitions to the surrounding neighborhood. Next. So with that, Mick.
Thank you, Doug. And I'll just close with, this was a pared down presentation showing specific elements tailored to your role in the project. There's a 45-minute version of this on Wednesday night that we would urge you all to attend, and note that the presentation on Wednesday will be posted on the bloomingtonhospitalsite.com website that you can access anytime that you wish to. So if you can't attend Wednesday night, you can always look at it afterwards. We're going to urge you and our public to go to that website after Wednesday's presentation to leave comments on a specially designed form. Of course, you all can tell us your feedback here in a minute, but if you really want to think about it and look at that full presentation, you'll have the ability to access that after Wednesday night as well. And then I also want to just mention that our ultimate goal here is to have an adaptable, flexible master plan that guides the development of the site and allows for the unknowns of our world, one of which we're in the middle of now and we don't know the end of. And at the same time, it should react to market conditions over the course of the multi-year, multi-phase development of this site. And you'll recall we've suggested this could take 10 to 15 years to develop out. So we'll suggest there are some phases coming forward in the future. Note that any development plans proposed by the public or the private sector in the future will require review by city staff, by your commission, by the plan commission, and possibly even the city council, depending on the nature of the proposal. And that the proposals reviewed by those commissions or council will always have public input opportunities as part of the review process. Finally, we're looking forward for the opportunity to continue to work on this project with you. We think it's very exciting to get a chance to redevelop an area that's been one use for 100 years, and now we're trying to plan it for the next 100 years. And also note that we'll be coming to you in December to make a recommendation on the core building specifically. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you have for our team.
Could I just ask one question? A couple of the slides referenced, 300 units, 350 units, but when you're referencing units, you're just referencing, it could be single family,
Yes.
multifamily. So that's just an individual dwelling, if you will, of all different types, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, just quickly to go off of that a little bit more. So like we showed some single family detached homes as well as townhomes, which would count as a single unit in themselves. And then when we get up to the larger multifamily units, we did sort of a range of 1,000 square foot, 15,000 square foot, just to give an estimate of sort of the build out that we are showing. So to give us a range.
I'll ask an additional question. This is Eric Sandweiss. Could you just speak, it's further in the future and maybe not quite as high a priority, but your vision and or what you're hearing from us in the community about the property further west around the old schoolhouse and so on. What becomes of that at a later point in this process, do you think?
There are some of those assets that will remain in the control of either the school corporation, which either owns the land underneath them or still owns the asset itself, and IU Health, who are either leasing space from the school corporation and have invested funds in those assets. So those answers, Eric, would have to come from those entities. We do not anticipate, from what we've heard from IU Health, some of those uses changing. For example, around the Hunter School site, IU Health has seemed to invest in a specific purpose healthcare initiative there that they want to continue. West of that, and the other land holdings by the private sector, there's the eye care center and other medical uses. We don't know whether the catalyst to move for any of them will be based on the new hospital site, and we have no idea how long or if that will even happen. The planning department and the plan commission are obviously looking at rezoning the entire area as part of the UDO, and so obviously those uses will be grandfathered no matter what the rezoning occurs. So it'll just be a market-driven process for those private sector parcels owned to the west of the site.
All right, thank you guys. Any other questions? All right.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to address you. Again, expect to see a lot more of us in the coming meetings that you have, as you all have some big decisions with us to make along the way. And we should have more cost estimates about public infrastructure investments that we could make in the coming meetings as well. But the next most important decision for you all will be the core building decision.
Yeah, thank you, Mika. That you just touched on my one question that I was just going to wait on, because I figured meetings to come on the public cost. So
that's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, Nick, absolutely.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much for your time, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you as well.
All right. Have a good night. Or stay for the fun. Got more fun things to do. All right.
That's right.
Next item of business is resolution 20-84, approval of funding agreement amendment for Life Design. Is there anyone that wants to speak in regards to this resolution?
Matt Swinney here from Hand. This amendment is due to a change in the sidewalk surrounding the group home. Due to the sidewalk that was put in, the access that they were going to have to the basement for the remodel that they were going to do down there to create a community space, they can no longer cost effectively access the basement. It would cost way too much to get access to the basement now. So they are switching to putting in tankless water heaters to replace the aging ones. It was a project that was going to come up anyway. So now they're just going to move on to that one instead of doing the community room in the basement.
Okay. What's the difference in cost? Sorry.
I don't actually, hold on just a second. The water heaters are going to come in less, for sure. Sorry about that, just a second.
No, you're fine.
So the original cost was going to be $38,392 for the remodel of the basement, and I believe that the water heaters was coming in significantly less, somewhere around 19 to 20. if I can pull that up real quick too.
Okay. Any other questions while he goes and searches for that, folks? Nick, do you have something?
Yeah, I mean, so they're going tankless, and I know this is like the latest trend to do. I guess from my perspective, I've heard, and if anyone has any differing opinions on this, I've heard pretty mixed reviews on that sometimes these tankless water heaters end up breaking rather quickly compared to tank water heaters. So, you know, is this gonna, I guess, like, is this something that we're gonna have to see more often? If there's any kind of like science behind it that someone can give me. But at the same time, it looks like there's a program through Duke where they could actually save money too. So if that's who we're going through to get that, or they're going through, that's just more of a comment. Duke has a program that you can save money putting those in. But I don't know. I heard that tankless might actually be worse than getting a tank water heater, and that we might be incurring more cost. That's just my comment question. A quament, as Brad Whistler would say.
Nick, they have gotten better, but I do remember some of the Japanese systems and the German systems at the very beginning did cause maintenance issues. But I think some of the American companies are now involved a little bit, and maintenance is a little better.
Okay.
But you do make a good you make a good point. Anybody else know any? David?
Yeah, this is Dave Walter. My research on these, yeah, you can buy them from Rheem and several American companies. Go down to Lowe's and look at them. The big question is it natural gas or is it electric? Because we do pay a premium for electric here in this community, and natural gas is really rather cheap. Now, you get a tank hot water heater that's natural gas, and it'll last 8 to 12 years before something will go wrong, the interior will rust out, and you'll have to replace it. These tankless units, there are some advantages to having them if you're not using a lot of water. You know, they're also demand oriented. So then if you have people are getting up and showering all at the same time, there's a real advantage to being able to get that instant water on demand. But when I priced it out to replace them here at my house, it just did not make economic sense for me. I would have gone natural gas, but then special flue, I still would have had to run power to it. You know, it was going to run maybe 3-4 times just going down and buying a new tank hot water heater. But you know, that's been my research on them, and every situation does depend upon amount of usage and your demand.
So this is Doris. I think we can go back, or at least Matt can go back and talk to the organization and get a feel why they chose tankless water heaters versus tank water heaters. And since this is funding through our department, maybe ask them to explore and provide a cost for both of those, and then can make a decision which is a better alternative for the organization.
That'd be fantastic.
And may I also suggest were the tanked water heaters, or the original water heaters, were those going out? Were they at their end of useful life, or is this just an upgrade that they've decided to do?
So they stated in the request that the previous water heaters were aging and, you know, at the end of their service, and they were going to replace them with high efficiency tankless water heaters. I thought that they had said that the previous ones were also tankless. I may be wrong on that.
Oh, man.
but I think they're trying to go with what looks like to be a more high efficiency, higher end water heater to avoid some of the problems that maybe had in the past. Like we've been talking about, since they have gotten better over the years. Their projected total cost on the project would be $14,000.
Okay. So significantly less than the amount of money we were going to give them.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions in regards to this resolution, or what are we doing? Are we going to table this? Is that what you suggest? Bev?
I would suggest or recommend tabling this for the next meeting that we have.
Yeah.
Getting some more information.
Is that okay? This isn't time sensitive, is it?
I don't think it is. I think it can wait 2 weeks. And so I will work with Matt and we'll work with the organization to find out more information of why they came up with tankless water heaters and get some other estimates for tank heaters.
It very well may be a space issue since it is a group home. Each individual unit would have its own water heater, so it may very well be a space issue. But again, we'll ask more detail on why they're going that route.
Okay. All right.
So we'll need an official motion for consideration at the December 7th meeting.
Oh, okay. So would that be would that be considered a continuance, or is it?
It's not a continuance. It's just a motion to consider the resolution at December 7th. So it's kind of like tabling, but it's a specific motion.
All right, I move to consider resolution 20-80. What is that? 84. Yeah, 84 at the December 7th Redevelopment Commission meeting.
This is David Walter. I'll second it.
All those in favor? Aye. Don Griffin.
Cindy Canardi, yes.
Kappas, yes.
And Royce, aye.
David Walter, yes.
All opposed? None. The motion does carry. Next, we're going to have a public hearing. Is that right?
This is part of a public meeting. That's correct. So at this point, we'll open the public meeting as considered under Indiana Code for the consideration of Resolution 20-86.
Okay. All right, here we go. The next item of business is Resolution 20-85, approval of conveyance to Habitat for Humanity of real estate at 1100 West 10th Street. Is there anyone present that wants to speak in regards to this resolution?
Well, I guess I'll start and Larry can jump in. So the city, the redevelopment, the Pan Department through the Redevelopment Commission acquired the West 10th Street property through foreclosure. We had worked with the previous owner of the property, who is now deceased, to build a home. That person, as I stated, became deceased. And so we had to go through the foreclosure process, since we still had a lien against the property at the time of the property owner's death in order to get the property back. There was a fire at the property. That damaged the house that was there on the property. We since have torn that house down. Habitat for Humanity is interested in using the property to build a container store. Not a container store, I'm sorry. To use it to build, use one of the train containers. What am I trying to say?
They're going to use, they're going to recycle, the storage, the metal storage containers to build a house, which isn't very efficient, but that's okay. But it's cool looking.
Yeah, and so they want to purchase the 10th Street lot from the department in order to build their container home. And then I'm gonna turn it down over to Larry, who's done research that says that the Redevelopment Commission can actually convey property to a not-for-profit without going through the normal steps of offering it for public bid. And so that's what we're actually talking about tonight. If you recall back in June, in an executive session, we talked about this particular property. We had received 2 appraisals. We talked about the value that we wanted to be able to offer this property for sale, which was at $14,500, which is the lowest of the 2 appraisal costs. And so now I'll turn it over to you, Larry.
Yeah, so that's where I'll start. I made this note to the commissioners, but for everybody, there is a correction to what's in the packet for resolution 20-85, and that will be the conveyance amount will be $14,500 instead of $19,500. The reason why we can follow special procedure, there's a different statute for the RDC that allows us to convey property to community development corporations, which Habitat is one, as long as they meet certain criteria. That criteria is outlined in the resolution for you. Just to visit those briefly. First of all, that they serve the primary function of providing housing for low or moderate income families within the geographic area, so that qualifies. Habitat also agrees to cause this development will serve or benefit low to moderate income families, which, as Doris just described, it will. And that shall be at least a commitment of 5 years. We can't require more than 5 years, but it will be a commitment of at least 5 years. And then they will also use work, subcontractor work or recipient work, or however, to the greatest extent feasible, of people that live in the area that will be served by this low income housing project. And then they also agree to rehabilitate or otherwise develop the property in a manner that's consistent with the neighborhood around it. So those are the general criteria. We felt that this property meets that criteria. And the one other thing to note is that just as part of our normal process, if you all approve this resolution, we'll draw up just a memorandum of understanding that memorializes the statutory requirements with Habitat prior to closing that they'll have to sign, and Don would be authorized to sign it on behalf of the RDC.
Let me ask a quick question. Do they have a price in mind that they're going to sell? Do we know the price that they're going to sell this to an individual or a family?
The container home, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
No, I do not. I can ask them if they have a price in mind. I know that they're right now in the process of actually remodeling the container into a home.
Okay, then
but more than likely, they will be selling it to one of their Habitat families.
Okay. And that's non-interest. They don't charge. They give you a mortgage, but they don't charge interest. Correct? That's their thing.
I don't know if that's for sure. I know that they do provide the mortgages to the homeowners that they sell their homes to.
Okay. All right. Any questions from any other commissioners?
Clarifying for the record that the motion we would be making would be for the purchase price of $14,500, not $19,500 as is in the packet.
That's correct.
And that there is no other reason than clerical error for explaining the difference.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the public in regards to resolution 20-84? Not 20-84, I'm sorry, 20-85. No. Okay.
This is David Walter. I'd like to make a motion. We accept resolution 20-85 with the change purchase agreement price of $14,500.
Nick Kappa, second.
All those in favor? Aye. Don Griffin.
Cindy Canardi, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Eric Sandweiss, yes.
David Walter, yes.
None opposed, so the motion does carry. The next item of business is resolution 20-86, approval of purchase agreement for 413 West 2nd Street.
And I'll just quickly note, Don, excuse me, that concludes the public hearing portion of the meeting. So
okay,
now we're on to regular business.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can speak to this. And then Larry, if you could jump in on the specifics of the contract. This is the lot on the corner of Rogers and 2nd Street. If you recall from the presentation that SOM just gave, that lot is not part of the transfer of property from IU Health to the city of Bloomington. And we are looking to round out the essentially that block by acquiring this lot. And we are planning to, with your approval, proceed with an immediate environmental evaluation of the lot. And this acquisition would be contingent upon that. But our hope is to be able to acquire that and fold it into the overall developable project that is the hospital site.
Any questions from any redevelopment commissioners in regards to resolution 20-86?
This is David Walter. I have one for Jeffrey Underwood. Jeffrey, do we have the money?
Yes, we have the funds available.
Okay. How about from the public? Any questions in regards to resolution 20-86 from the public? And none. All right.
I do have a question. I mean, to kind of piggyback Dave's question, is now the time to purchase this? Is this the only time we can purchase this? Because of everything going on in the world? Just want to throw that question out there. Maybe Alex can answer that.
Are you asking that from a more of a financial perspective or from a strategic acquisition?
Strategic. You know, I mean, with the way that the world is going and, you know, organizations in our community might need that money more than us buying this piece of property, you know, through grants or whatever. I mean, just question is, you know, is now the right time?
Well, and I'll defer to Jeff on more of the financial, but from a strategic perspective, I would say two things. One is obviously TIF funding is very limited in what it can do. So you know, it's not like we can turn the equivalent monies over into any other use. From a timing perspective, it is our estimation that this acquisition can and should be done now in order to facilitate what really will stem from the master planning process. And so to leave this lot, you know, out of the control of the Redevelopment Commission, just as we are about to move into some of this early phasing of development, in our opinion, is something that we should not do. We should jump on this while we can. And so, you know, Jeff can talk to the limitations on TIF funding if necessary, but I would say that this would be a good time to pursue this.
I don't need I understand how the TIF funds work. I guess it was more strategic in total.
But
Jeff, you are sure we have the money?
Yes, I'm sure we have the funds.
Okay.
And once again, I think we were talking about this earlier on something else. And what's the worst if we were to let someone else purchase this property? What could happen? What's the worst that could happen? That's a no. I mean,
yeah, no, it's a good question. And you know, this is always a question we're challenged with, which is, you know, when is it the right time for the Redevelopment Commission to own something, and when is it best to leave it up to private development? In this particular case, if you look back at the presentation that SOM just gave, and you see the role that the corner of 2nd Street and Rogers plays in the overall development, it is to some extent, one of the critical intersections of the development. And this falls right on that intersection. And so, while we don't know exactly what will happen on this lot and the adjacent lots, according to the master plan that we were just looking at, the potential for a significant redevelopment of this entire block face is important enough to the overall master plan that we feel that just leaving it carved out, and to some extent, while we can control through zoning what would happen there, we would not really be able to, in the same way, assemble it with some of the adjacent lots. So, it's always a challenge. Ideally, you leave it up to the private sector, but in this particular case, it is an outlier lot, and it is one of the only ones actually in the acquisition. So we feel that it's something that's important for us to fold in and then really free up for future development, which will yield the returns back to TIF that ultimately can justify it.
Okay.
I feel
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, Don, I think we're all, as a group, we're all wary of overbuying, of overinvesting in land beyond what are the kind of the strict sites within our purview with a strictly a really evident and obvious public value. But to my mind, I mean, the value of this site and my reason for supporting it would be kind of the fact that it's we're kind of stuck in a way without it, in the sense that the hospital site and the RDC's property includes all of the lots to the east of it and to the west of it. And so having it as a gap does potentially decrease the ability of the city to really see a continuous and a well thought out development along that corridor, not to mention the strategic quality of the corner itself. So it's while I share a reluctance to kind of go around picking out lots, this is one that really seems to be kind of conspicuously missing in terms of our ability to make sure that the site develops wisely and cohesively.
Yeah, it will, with that lot, and I think people that are listening or watching, with this lot, we'll have control of the south side of 2nd Street all the way down to the what's our trail called? Help me out. Beeline. So that does present an opportunity to bring it all together. Just asking the question. We need to, we need to look at both sides. So
likewise important, I think, to go on the record, although it's come up in earlier discussions of the site, is the basis for the proposed cost that we're paying. I wonder if Alex or Jeff would speak to that.
Yeah,
Yes.
we had 2 appraisals, right?
We did have 2 appraisals. They were very different from each other.
Okay, can you give us the prices?
Yeah, so there, at the low end was an appraisal for 205, and at the high end, the second appraisal was 375. So they were very, very different takes, which sometimes could be very hard to manage through. In the end, it was negotiation with the seller.
Mm-hmm. Were they both good appraisers?
They are both
well known,
certified local appraiser.
Okay.
And so admittedly, that's hard. You like to see those 2 types of appraisals come in closely aligned, and more often than not, they do. In this case, that was not the case. So and then we entered a negotiation with the seller, and this is the price that we settled in on.
So the high end of the appraisal, it came in at 375, the high end, appraisal came in at 3. Yeah, the higher one. And we're at 350.
That's right.
And this is also prior to our doing our due diligence. We're going to do due diligence, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions from any more sorry. Do we have any more questions? Because I'm going to ask the public if they've got any questions in regards to this resolution 20-86. No? Anybody in the public, would they happen to have any questions on resolution 20-86? Okay. Do we have a motion?
This is David Walter. I'd like to make a motion that we accept resolution 20-86. And my grandmother always said, if you get an opportunity to buy the property next door, buy it.
Eric Sandweiss, second.
All those in favor? I, Don Griffin.
Cindy Canarney, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Sandweiss, yes.
David Walter, yes.
All opposed? None. The motion does carry. The next item of business is resolution 20-87. This is approval of funding for third addendum for the Beeline Trail and multi-use path. Do we have someone that wants to speak briefly in regards to this? No? Hello? All right, do we need to come back to resolution 20-87? Maybe go on to resolution 20-88?
I can, since there's not a member of the Plan Commission with us for whatever reason, I can speak briefly to 20-87. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that there wasn't somebody from the Plan Commission, or not Plan Commission, but Planning Department with us. So this was for the Beeline extension off of 17th Street. That's going as part of the, we did a big rebuild of 17th Street in general, and so we're connecting the Beeline from its northernmost endpoint to all the way to 17th Street. This was a third addendum to add some of the design services, specifically some revised right-of-way services based on the new developments that they've had since the 17th Street. Part of this has been more completed, also to do some utility potholing and environmental services as well. The total amount for the addendum was $180,900. This was approved by the Board of Public Works on October 13th, and that approval, or the contract as they approved it, is part of Exhibit A. But this brings the total cost for this design to Aztec for the Beeline extension to $883,699.
Okay. Any questions from the public in regards to resolution 20-87? Any questions from commissioners in regards to resolution 20-87? Do we have a motion? You guys are the worst Brady Bunch lineup I've ever seen.
That we approve resolution 20-87.
Cindy Canarney seconds.
All those in favor? I, Don Griffin.
Cindy Canarney, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Sandweiss, yes.
David Walter, yes.
All are in favor. The motion does approve. Yes. Last item of business is resolution 20-88. Approval of extension of agreement with City Lawn.
Yeah, so this is the city lawn agreement that we have for mowing services, particularly in the trades district, but of our RDC properties. We had kind of guesstimated how much it would cost to upkeep those lawns and have them nice and manicured for the year. It took a little bit more than that. There's actually built in some headroom to this addendum. So this would do two things. One, it would provide a little additional funding to cover the final mowings of the season for 2020. It also serves as the notice to extend this agreement through 2021. And we are in talks in future after this agreement expires to see if we can't fold these types of agreements in with the normal City of Bloomington agreements and kind of transfer funds that way just to make it a little tidier so that we have some oversight over this. So again, just this is additional $3,000 of funding. I don't think we're going to use all of that. I think we're going to use actually about half of that in total for the remaining mowings that took place on the trades district. And then it will also renew the agreement under its original terms for 2021, which we have to give notice to them between 30 and 60 days prior to the end of the term, prior to the end of the year in this case. And this comes out of the 444 account, which is our maintenance account. So it's not out of the consolidated TIF. This comes out of our revenues from rent and lease payments and all that stuff.
Does anyone know how many goats we could buy for $3,000? We've talked about it, haven't we?
We've got a goat guy. I can find out.
You got a goat guy.
That'll be the latest Christmas fundraisers, support a trades district goat and possibly set up some wells there. So.
Oh, okay. Any questions in regards to resolution 20-88 from the public? Okay. We don't have any. So any questions from commissioners?
This is David Walter. I'll make a motion we accept 20-88. We got to keep our grass looking good.
Second, this is Eric Sandwise.
All those in favor? I, Don Griffin.
Cindy Canardi, yes.
Nick Kappas, yes.
Sandwise, yes.
David Walter, yes.
None opposed. The motion carries. Is there any other general discussion or business that we need to speak of? Are we all ready to adjourn?
Nothing from city staff.
Okay. Meeting is adjourned.